What's going on, everyone? This is Ryan with Automatic Comics, and in this video, we have got the recap of session one of this big heritage comic auction. And I gotta say, for the first time in quite a few big auctions that I've been watching, whether that's Comic Link, Comic Connect, Heritage, whatever it is, this is the first one that kind of underperformed. It wasn't like it was extremely weak or anything like that, but definitely did not see the overperformance and strength that I have seen in the prior auctions. We'll get into all the numbers as well, but that's just what I'm seeing at the surface right now with this auction. So, if you don't remember, I did a video just a few days ago where I gave the estimates for what I thought every book in session one would sell for, the total sales for this auction. And then I said I would come back and recap that and talk about the big sales, the disappointments, how the total sales volume did, all that kind of stuff. Now, the first thing you can see up on the screen here, got this Action Comics #1. That throws a big wrench into everything here because the Action Comics #1 did not sell. You can see on the screen here, it says buy now, 960,000 includes buyer's premium. So it ended up that there was a reserve on this book, and the reserve did not get met. And so this book did not sell. And so that really messes up all the numbers because this book was literally a quarter of the value of session one. So I'm going to give you two sets of numbers at the very beginning here, because what I had estimated as session one was $6,192,584. That's why I said I had estimated this book was going to sell for 1.5 million. And if it doesn't sell, that is literally, like I said, a quarter of the value. So right off the bat, if you include the Action one, this auction was a big disappointment in terms of performance. So what I'm going to do is, just because it throws everything so out of whack because of the value of that book, I'm going to give you the numbers without the Action one in it. So just remember that caveat is here. I'm not trying to make it so things seem better, or something like that. But that is, that book just throws everything out of whack. And so that's what I'm going to do here. If you take that book out, the estimate for session one is $4,692,584. The total sales, at least that I pulled in, was $4,715,040. Heritage, you can see here, is showing $4,723,000. So there's some $8,000 discrepancy somewhere. I don't know what that is, but regardless, pretty close. So with that, that tells us that the total sales numbers were almost identical between what I had estimated they would go for and what they sold for. It was like $20,000 more that they sold if you take out the Action one. So yeah, if you take out the Action one. However, that's not the full picture. So yes, the total sales numbers were approximately what I thought they would be. But in terms of performance of the books, meaning how many went above my estimates or below, what I saw was a underperformance in this auction. And so what I'm typically looking for is 50-50. So if everything is flat and even, it means that half the books are going to go above my estimates and half the books are going to go below. In this auction, only 43% went above. So that means that it was a little bit of an underperformer. It's not a huge disappointment or anything. And obviously, because the total sales numbers were almost exactly what I thought they would, it means the ones that did better actually helped bring that total back up. So there were some very strong sales. But in terms of percentage performance, it was a bit of a disappointment. Now, the other thing that I look at is also the individual eras. And in this one, surprisingly, we actually had gold that performed the worst. I've generally seen gold performing the strongest, where I see about 60% of the books from the Golden Age beating my estimates. And this one, it was only 39%. So gold performed the worst. And there were some pockets within this auction that definitely underperformed, and some that were very surprising to me. Silver was second worst at just 42%. The strongest was bronze. 71% of the books in the bronze era beat my estimates. Now, remember, bronze and modern don't have nearly as many books in these session ones because the average price point in session 1 is so high that a lot of bronze modern books don't fit. And so modern 67% beat my estimates, but there were only 3 modern books. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt, but bronze was actually the strongest. Modern was second strongest, then silver, then gold in this auction. All right. So those are the high level kind of like overall numbers for this auction. Now let's start talking about some individual books. And the first one here, I mean, we have to talk about is this Action Comics #1. I mean, this is a book that if we jump over to GPA and we look at the prior sale for an Action Comics #1 and a 3.0, it was like 1.6 million. So if we jump down to a 3.0, you can see here $1,638,759. Now, granted, as comic boom period, it was triple what it was in 2016. So it went up a lot. But I mean, when you look at this copy is significantly, to me, better presenting than the other one. Now, granted, we had some big sales for Action 1 recently. We've had a number of copies for Action 1 recently. So you wonder if that's playing a role, where it's a book that I typically would only see this book come up for sale like once a year. And we have had like 4 or 5 copies in the last couple months. Now, some have been restored and all that, but there have been a lot of copies of this. And you always wonder, is that overwhelming demand some? Because I had this one going for 1.5 million. It did not even hit the reserve, which was 960,000. Now you can definitely tell, and there's always things where it's like how much color adjust has been done on images and that kind of thing. But you can just tell, like, the reds and the blues on this copy look quite a bit better than the reds and the blues on this copy. So I don't know if it's color strike or if it's actual fading, but it does seem like this one has some fading to the cover. So that, I'm sure, hurt the book. But I mean, there's some tape on the spine and everything, but it's still a blue label Action Comics 1 and did not hit that $1 million mark, which is surprising. I think the reserve probably played a role, because that reserve popped up maybe 3 or 4 days before the auction started. And I always wonder that with a reserve like that, if it shows the hand of the seller, and so the people that were going to bid immediately just go, I'll just wait. A lot of people probably know who owns these books, and maybe they think they're like, I'll just reach out to that person directly. And, maybe I can get it for even less. Like, if this is what they're putting as their reserve, maybe, privately I can get it for even less. And you wonder if that holds off the bidding on the book. I don't know. I can't say. I don't play around in this level of market. And, but I think the reserve probably hurt it. But I also think that the Detective Comics 27 that sold recently, that went really low, may have, scared this person a little bit, and that's why they put the reserve in. They're like, I'm not going to let this book go for like 600,000 or 700,000 or something. And so they put the reserve on, and that ended up killing the sale. I can't say for sure, but that's kind of what it feels like with this book. But this was the first book in the auction. And so it didn't, like, that first book did not start off great. The second book was this All-Star #8, went for 60,000. This to me was also a pretty big disappointment. So a slow start. Now we did get some big sales early too, but like the first couple, slow start, because this is a really nice looking copy, really bright colors and everything, like a 6.0. Record sale was 90,000. I had it going for 75,000, went for 60. So 20% below my estimate. So to me, this was another disappointing sale. I also think it can be a little tricky being right at the front of these. Like, if I said this in my last video, if it takes some time for people to get settled in with their bidding, but yeah, disappointing sale to me. But the one right after that, this was a solid sale. Batman #11, 9.4. I think it's tied with one other. Yeah, one other at the top of the census, 132,000. Prior record for this book in this grade was $65,725. I had it going for 100,000. Went for 132, and I wasn't even sure if it would hit that 100,000 mark. So this one definitely, caught some attention, got some bids. Before the live bidding even started, this book was only at 52,800. So this book just about almost tripled. I mean, not quite, but about 2.5 times during the live bidding. So a lot of interest happened with this book. Now, I'm not going to go through every book, obviously. It's like 200 books, but some of the really big ones are right at the start. So I figured to talk about these. We had the Captain America #1. This one went for 168,000. A little bit of a disappointment on this. I mean, prior record was 172,000, so it almost hit that record. I had it going for 185 because I thought this one was a very solid presenting copy, really bright colors. 9% below my estimate. I mean, that's when books are within that type of range, like within 10%, at this price point, that's like one bid. So at this price point, I generally don't think too much about that. That's about as close as you can hope to be, within around 10% for huge books like this that don't sell very often. So yeah, a little bit of a disappointment, but not a huge deal. Then we had the Detective Comics 27, the first of two. There were two in this auction. 5.0. There's a lot going on with this one. It's an extensive B5 restoration, meaning there's a lot of it, and it's in between amateur and professional. Had a married cover, I think maybe a married centerfold too, also trimmed. Still went for 228,000. I had this one going for 215, so just a little over my estimate, 6%. But again, same as the last one, within 10% for a book like this, especially a restored book, which can be very difficult to estimate the value. I think this one did very well. Now I want to start jumping around to some of the, we'll call them like the bigger surprises, either on the upside or the downside. And the first one, this one blew me away. I was not expecting this sale. 9.2 showcase number 17. I mean, here we go. Like, first appearance of Adam Strange. Like, I mean, a character that, I mean, come on, let's be honest. Like, not a popular character today. 9.2 is single highest graded, so top of census, $84,000. That is a huge number. I had this, it's never sold before. This is very recently graded. You can see here, 4494, so very recently graded. So new top of census book. And I had this going for 35 grand. I mean, 140% above my estimate. This one completely blew me away. And we'll just jump over to GPA just to show some pricing, because the 9.0 has sold relatively recently. And this 9.2, I believe, was added after that 9.0 sale. Yeah. So the 9.0 sold for $26,000 in November of 2020. We had an 8.5 for $13,000 in September of this year, an 8.0 for $16,000. That was a big sale in October. But I mean, huge jump here, because like this 9.0 in 2020, that was the highest graded at that point. And so a lot of times what you'll see is when it's not like a 9.6 or 9.8, if you just add one more grade, it's not going to it often won't get a huge jump, because you're really just taking the place of the prior top of census book, but not in this case. I mean, this was a big number. There's definitely some interest in this one. This book, before the live bidding started, was at 48,000. It was already above my estimate at that point, but it's still almost doubled on that sale. So big fans of Adam Strange, showcase number 17, 84,000. That was one of the big surprises early on for me. Now, another one, and I'll say this one wasn't necessarily a big surprise. It's just that it went well below what I thought it might, because of what I've seen in some other cases. And this was a Mile High copy. This is Air Fighters Comics, Volume 2, Number 4. Nothing key about this book, but these Mile High books generally get a lot of interest. And this one went for $4,560. It's from 1944. I had it going for $8,500. So it was well below my estimates. I mean, 46% below my estimates, but it's the type of book that it's only valuable really at this price point because it's a Mile High, because it's top of census. And so it's tough to say what that's going to ultimately go for, but I thought it would go for more. And this one it did not meet those expectations. The next one, I like to occasionally talk about ones where, I'm really close on the price too, because I think when I talk about the big outliers, some people think like, it's like, oh, like, how are you even pricing this stuff? And so most of the time the prices are relatively close. It's just, I'd like to talk about the ones that are the big surprises. But one of them that I was right on was the Archie Comics #1. So we had Archie Comics #1 and a 3.0, went for 18,000. I had it going for 18,000. So there are also cases, you know, and I would say in most cases where they go pretty close to what I think they're going to go for. It's just less interesting when a book sells for exactly what you think it's going to versus, you know, when you have some huge outlier sale where a book really overperforms or underperforms. I mean, for example, the one that sold right after that, this Batman #1 and a 1.5, I had going for 110,000 and it went for 108,000. So 2% below my estimate, but almost exactly what I thought that book would go for. Actually, a record for this book too. Prior record was 92,800. So a new record for this book, solid looking 1.5. And I felt like this was a very solid sale. One of the books that beat that $100,000 price point. Now, one that sold right after this, that to me was a big underperformer, was this Batman #7. This is a 9.0. See here, there's 4 and 9.0, 2 higher. So it's near the top. I had this book going for 28,000, went for 16,800. It is a record. The prior record was 16,500. But this book generally has gone up since those sales. So I think that this was a great pickup for whoever got it. I mean, how often do you get 1941 Batman? And this is one of the pretty cool early Batman covers. 1930 or 1941 Batman 9.0, like in the near mint range. And to me, going for what was a pretty good price. So if we jump over to GPA, just to take a look at this Batman #7, just kind of see what I'm talking about here. So we have this 9.0 here, sold for 16,800. It sold for 16,500 back in 2017. This is 7 years later. And this book, across all other grades, has definitely gone up since 7 years ago. I mean, look at this. It was like 2,500 back in 2016, now 6,000 in a 7.0. Go down to some other grades like a 3.0. This book back in 2017, 950, now 1,620. And that even seemed like maybe a little bit of a low sale. So like doubled in price. And so I felt like doubling I didn't think was going to happen, which would have been like 32,000, which is why I backed it off a little bit. And I said 28,000. And so this, I mean, a book that to me was completely flat for 7 years. That has, to me, that's a good buy. I think that was a very good buy for this book. It is a solid looking copy, off white to white pages. I mean, good page quality as well. Yeah, I think that that was a great pickup by whoever got that book. Now, the next one here, this is one that definitely surprised me as well. I wasn't seeing this number come in. So this is I believe it's a Jack Kamen cover. Yeah, I'm almost certain it's a Jack Kamen cover. This is Brenda Starr #14. It's one of the more famous kind of like good girl art bondage type covers from the golden age. And this is a 7.0 that went for $14,400. Prior record, 7,600. I had this going for $8,500. This beat my estimate by 69%. This was a big, big number for this book, but definitely a big sale for this one. Now, right after this, we had a bunch of Captain Americas. There weren't any super shocking sales with the caps. We had a Captain America #2, the 9.2. I mean, it's restored. The restored copies definitely, they aren't getting all that much love, but it didn't do too bad. I mean, I had it going for 15,000. It went for 13,800, 8% below my estimate. So a little below, but pretty close. The Cap 3 actually did fairly well. It was sitting pretty low. This one was at 21,000 before the live bidding started, got quite a few bids during the live. I had it going for 23,000. Prior record was 21,275, went for 30,000. So beat my estimate by 30%. I mean, it was a solid sale, set a new record, and it is a very nice looking copy, but it had hung up for a while. It was sitting down in the low 20s, and it pulled some more bids out during that live bidding. Ended up doing pretty good. Then we had a cap number 13, World War II cover. This one was definitely an underperformer in my opinion. Prior record 33,460. I had it going for 33,000. You can see here it went for 26,400. So 20% below my estimate. Then we had a cap number 15. This one, 6.0, went for 5,760. I had this one going for 5,200, so 11% over my estimate. A little bit over. That's what I'm saying. Like, no big shocking sales in this one. We had some strong performers and some underperformers. Now the biggest sale for this for cap in this session was Captain America number 46. This is the World War II Holocaust cover. Actually, no, this would be the second biggest because the cap 3 did go for a little bit more. I had this one going for 22,000. Prior record was 33,600. This is one I talked about that we've been seeing huge variation in this, but went for 27,600. So not a record, but I felt like this was still a very solid sale for this book. It's one that I estimated it would definitely go over 20, but I wasn't sure exactly how much. Prior to the live bidding, it was sitting at 27,000, so it got like one bid, like during the live. But yeah, 27,600. I felt like this is a very respectable sale for this book. Now I'm going to jump to where I saw a lot of underperformance, and this was in the EC Crime Suspense Stories books, and it was Gaines file copies and non-Gaines file copies. But the first one, because there were a bunch of them that came out in a row, and these were like, I was just like, I was shocked by these prices. So we had a 9.4 of Crime Patrol number 7. This one I had going for 4,500, went for 3,120. So 31% below my estimate. Then we had Crime Patrol number 8. This one went for 15% below my estimate. I also had it going for 4,500. Now we get into the Gaines file copies. So here, prior record, 16,800. This one went for 4,920. I had it going for 12,000. This was 59% below my estimate. I mean, I had to go check just to make sure I didn't make a mistake. So we go Crime Suspense Stories number 2, just to make sure I didn't make a mistake on this. Now, there are a lot of 9/8 of these books, like these file copies. But I mean, look at this. That was 16,800. And it was this year. I mean, just September. And I don't know if this was one of the, it's not like this was from a collection or anything like that. Off-white to white pages. This one was white pages. Like, I don't know. I don't know if it was just like a little too much over exuberance on this last one with this big jump. But in 2021, 7,000. I mean, this is less than the 2021 sale, back down around 2018, 2017 numbers. Like, and this wasn't the only one. So this was definitely, to me, like these were surprising. And there were 4 in a row. There was this one. Then there was issue number 3. I'd gone for 6,500, went for 4,320, also a 9.8. Then we had issue number 4, went for 6,000. I had this one going for 11,000. Prior record, 13,200, 45% below my estimate. Then we had one more, number 14. I had this one going for 15,000. Prior record, 18,600. I fully expect to see that someone is going to be trying to flip these books right when they get them. like I absolutely expect that to happen. I mean, at first I was just like, are these books damaged or something that I don't see? Or, I mean, this is one where it just feels like maybe those last sales were just people way too excited about these file copies and maybe didn't realize how common they actually are or something. But I mean, I've been seeing a lot of strength with Gaines file copies over the last like 6 to 8, maybe 6 to 12 months. And these 4 books really, really underperformed. They were the ones that stuck out to me probably the most in this auction. just because it was like book after book where they had sales in the 5 figures, and now we're mid to low four figures, not low, but mid 4 figures. So yeah, these ones were some of the biggest surprises to me in this entire first session. Now let's jump to this is one of the coolest books that was in this entire session. The Detective Comics 27, the second one. This is a 0.5 brittle pages, wrong back cover. And so that's why, it gets the 0.5, because it means it's incomplete. $312,000. I had it going for $275,000, so 13% over my estimate. This, I mentioned it in my prior video. This is basically the same as what we saw with the Action Comics number 1.5. So if we look at that Action Comics number 1.5, this sold on Heritage in September. And this is basically like similar. I mean, this one back cover's missing, 0.5 off white pages, went for $408,000. And so this gave us basically, what is that minimum value for an Action Comics number 1? This gave us really what is that minimum value for a Detective Comics 27. Thing is, here you're going to have the highest concentration of bidders at this price point, because this is where it's like, who can have their opportunity to get a copy of this book. And so it performed, to me, even though just 13% above, but that is a very solid sale for a 0.5 brittle page, missing back cover, effectively Detective Comics 27. So that was a cool one to see. I enjoyed that. Next we had I know Mickey talked about this one on his live stream as well. We had the Eerie Comics number 1, CBCS 8.5. And this is one of those examples, again, of the risk and value with CBCS. Now, you could argue, maybe people don't think that this is an 8.5. I personally didn't think that this was an 8.5. But still, if we look at Eerie Comics number 1, just to kind of get a little bit of an idea on the recent pricing that we've had for this book over the last couple of years. I mean, an 8.0, $28,000, 7.5, $25,000, 6.5, $21,000 this September. I mean, there's no question this book is a 6.5. I mean, it's probably a 7.5. And so I have to think someone is going to be flipping this book. Like they're going to get this book, they're going to switch it into a CGC case, and then they're going to ask 25 grand for it, at least. I mean, like there's, like I said, there's no way it's a 6.5. Like, this book is too nice. It isn't. I mean, I don't think it's a 7 or an 8.5. The thing that concerned me with it was some of the spine wear. Like, I just don't see CGC giving this book an 8.5. Not with that spine wear, not with, the dust shadows on the front. I don't think that's a stain. I'm almost certain it's not a stain. But I mean, the back cover looks pretty nice. It looks like it has, like a crease. I mean, it just doesn't feel like an 8.5, And so for everybody that always tells me like, oh, CBCS, they always grade harsher and blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, like there's variation in all the grading companies. Like, there's little bits of variation in all the grading companies. And I don't think that this book is an 8.5. And that's why it sold for less, or part of it. But that sold for like a 6.0 price, kind of. I mean, granted, I feel like this 21 was really high for a 6.5. It feels really high. But I feel like it sold for like a 6.5 price when it was graded as an 8.5. And I think it's probably a 7.5. And I think someone's going to take this book, get it regraded, going to get their 7.5, and they're going to sell it for like 25 grand. And, it's a pretty distinctive book, because of that dust shadow. We'll know if we see one pop up for sale and it's got this date stamp right here, and then we'll be able to see, like, I mean, who knows? Hey, maybe it gets the 8.5. I have no idea. But yeah, I think CBCS hurt this one. People not thinking this book is legitimately an 8.5 hurt this one. And yeah, definitely a underperformer. I had it going for 24,000, 38% below my estimate. Definitely not a lot of interest in that CBCS book. Now, the next few books I'm going to talk about here are for a character that, unless you're like a Golden Age collector or Golden Age person, you're probably not really going to recognize this character, but it's the Black Terror. This is actually his first appearance, Exciting Comics number 9. This is the Cosmic Aeroplane Pedigree. First book actually underperformed to me. I had this going for 30,000, went for 24,000, 20% below my estimate. Next book. This book crushed what I thought it would go for. A 6.5, I think this is like very minor amount of glue. Yeah. Oh, no color touch. Very minor amount of color touch. That you can have very small amounts of glue or color touch and still get blue labels. People sometimes don't understand that, but I don't know what the threshold is for color touch, but you can get a blue label still. This is a 6.5. Went for $7,800. Prior record $1,575. I had it going for $1,850. I mean, let's take a look at it. Exciting number 30. So we got Exciting Comics number 30. 6.5 has sold before. Sold in 2019 for $1,575. I mean, this book has generally been pretty flat. I mean, look, like a 3.0, 840, 2.5, 461. It's not like a book. I mean, look at this. Like 2019, 950, 2018, 512. Like, I wasn't expecting like a big jump in the price for this book at all. And so just kind of giving you a little history for why I priced it the way I did. Like, I thought it might go up a little bit, but not much, since all the other grades have been pretty flat. This one beat my estimate by 322%. It wasn't even close. Like, this one definitely got some serious attention. 2 and a 6.5, 5 higher. It's not like it's like the top of census or anything. It is a relatively uncommon grade or uncommon book. You can see Gerber of 8 or rare, but I mean, clearly you can see the book has sold recently. I mean, how many sales in the last year? 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, I don't call that rare. Like a Gerber 8, usually, I mean, sometimes you got to take those Gerber ratings with a grain of salt. But yeah, I don't know. Big surprising sale for that one. Then we had number 37. This one sold for $7,200. I had it going for $12,000. I mean, it's a 9.4. So this one underperformed quite a bit, 40% under. And then one of my favorite covers, I think this one's hilarious. This is an 8.0 white pages, 21,600. I had it going for 15,500, beat my estimate by 39%. So this one's just, it's like, you know, it's the propaganda type covers, Nazis giving little kids candy that's been poisoned. So it's a super cool cover, and definitely got some serious bidding. I mean, $21,600 for an 8.0 white pages copy of this book. So now we've got Fantastic Comics number 3. This is like the number 1 book for Lou Fine collectors. I've said I'm not a Lou Fine fan. I've said before, I just don't like the way he draws people. I mean, I think the robot on this cover looks pretty cool. I think the dumping the people out of the train looks pretty cool. It's cool content. I just don't like the way he draws people. But a 1.8 Fantastic Comics number 3 sold for $90,000. I had it going for $85,000, so it was right in line, 6% over my estimate. Prior record was $40,800 from about 3 years ago. This book, very similar to Suspense Comics number 3, it's become one of those books that just gets a lot of attention. It rarely comes up for sale, and so the bidding definitely showed that. I don't really expect this to pull out other copies. I mean, maybe it will, but there's just not many copies to get out there. So, but yeah, 90,000, super expensive book. Definitely the biggest book for Lou Fine. Now, next we had a few more Gaines file copies that came up, and so I'll point these ones out too. We had this Frontline Combat number 5. I had this one going for 2,400, went for 2,280. So that one was more in line. Then we had number 8. I had it going for 4,200, went for 2,280. So that one was quite a bit low. And then we had number 15. I had this one going for 4,800, went for 4,320. So all of them underperformed, not nearly to the level of the Crime Suspense Stories books, though. And I mean, those books just had those huge sales prior to these ones, and they just seem to have those sales. Just, you got to call them outliers, I guess. And These ones went a little more in line with their prior sales. But yeah, there were quite a few of these Gaines file copies that came up in this auction, and they did not do very well. Now, one book I just want to talk about, because it's a book that I have picked up recently, is currently on my keeper list. This is Teenage Dope Slaves. It's actually Harvey Comics Library #1, one of the craziest covers from the Golden Age. 8.5. I had it going for 12,000. Prior record was 11,400. Went for 14,400. And I always like seeing books that I have good sales, and this one was no exception. So 20% over my estimate. Just a crazy cover. I think that's just the thing about that book. It is a shocking cover and had a very solid sale. Now, another shocking cover. Lawbreaker Suspense Stories #11, just the creepy tongues cover, where this guy basically is telling this woman that the people in the basement can't call for help because he cut out all their tongues, and he's got all their tongues in his hands. It's yeah, pretty gross cover. But this is an 8.5 off-white to white pages, sold for 14,400. I had it going for 12,000. This was not a record. It did have a record sale of 19,200, but when I see big sales like that, I don't necessarily just immediately say that's the value. I will also look at other sales that have happened, see if I think that that's an outlier. In this case, I felt like it was a bit of an outlier. That's why I had it at 12 and beat my estimate by 20%, but solid sale, strong sale for this creepy book. Now, another book, it's on my keeper list. Sometimes, like I said, I always want to talk about those. Go to Mass Comics #1. Some people like Mass Comics #2 more. I like Mass Comics #1 more. This is a 2.0, went for 13,200. I had it going for 11,000. Prior record was 12,600. It seemed like prices might have been coming down a little bit on it, but this was a very solid sale for this book. It is a good looking 2.0. That definitely helps the book. But yeah, new record for Mass Comics #1 in a 2.0. And yeah, always happy to see big sales on books like this. But yeah, LB Cole, this is my favorite LB Cole cover. For me, this is his the best one that he did, and is actually very early in his career. It's 1945. All right, let's talk about just a couple more Golden Age books, and we'll get into some Silver Age stuff and Bronze and Modern and all of that. First one here. This one was fun because someone that was on the live stream when I was on with Mickey bought this book that was in the live stream. I thought they got a great pickup with this one. I had it going for 105,000. Prior record was 141,000. 1.0, 84,000. I mean, to me, I think this is a respectable looking 1.0. I mean, yeah, it's got this kind of wear and stuff along the spine, but there's no big pieces missing. Colors are decent. Back cover looks good too, because this is one of those books that the back cover actually to me matters because it's more art than like an advertisement. And so, yeah, I thought this was a great pickup. I just thought I'd call that one out because I thought that was fun, that it was somebody that was on the live stream when this was selling that picked this one up. And then we had one that I was crushed. I was bidding on this one. I thought I won it. I really wanted this book. I thought I had won this book. And the auctioneer, Brian, he was writing it down. I saw him writing it down. And I was like, oh, I just won that book. And then someone threw in a bid, stole it from me. So USA Comics #7. This is probably my favorite Schomburg Cap cover in terms of like how he represents Cap. I mean, it's awesome. Like he's, skydiving in, you got Bucky with the machine gun. Like this is a cool cover. It's a 3.0, slightly brittle pages. I had it going for 10,000, went for 10,800. I mean, I bid right up to what I had it at, and somebody just threw in that bid above me. Stole it from me. And I think I know who won it because I saw someone post a picture of a Cap or a USA 7. I think it might have been Kihei on Instagram. So that was upsetting. if he's the one that won it, I'm upset. But yep, USA Comics #7. Yeah, I did not end up with this one, sadly. Then let's say one, like the last book I'm going to talk about for Golden Age, and like I said, we'll jump to some more quote modern stuff, was this one, just because this was a big drop. Whiz Comics, technically #1, first appearance of Captain Marvel, 2.5, and a beautiful copy. Just has this big tear along the left edge, 48,000. I had this book going for 87,500. I mean, let's go look at that. I mean, this was ever since that Black Adam movie and like this, like, look at this, like a 3.0 in March, 96,000, 3.5, 120,000, 5.5, 188,000. Like, this is an expensive book. This sale here, I mean, 48,000. Yeah, it's a record from a sale back in 2010, but this book just got destroyed in this auction. So not a good sign if you own one of these. I don't know if this is an outlier or what, but wow, like that was one of the bigger shocks that I saw. 45% below my estimate, and for a huge book, like major first appearance. And yep, big disappointment. All right, now let's jump to that Amazing Fantasy 15. Little bit of an underperformer. I had this one going for 110,000. Prior record was 225,000. Went for 90,000. So 18% below my estimate. This is a beautiful copy. It's got this chip in the upper right corner, but otherwise, colors are amazing. Really nice, like edges, corners, spine is decent. Like, beautiful book. And yeah, just underperformed in my opinion. Then we had an Amazing Spider-Man #1 right after that. Sold for almost exactly what I thought. I had it going for 45,000, went for 43,200. So no big surprises there. Then we had a 7.5 sell right after that, go for 28.8. I had it going for 31,000, so 7% below my estimate. So again, no big surprises on that one either. Now, one that was a really strong sale, and I like to always call these out when it's a new record post comic boom. We had an Amazing Spider-Man #8, 9.8. It had a prior record during the comic boom of 23,400. This sold for 38,400. I had it going for 20 because this book has come down some. 92% over my estimate. This was a beast of a sale. There are 7 9.8s of this book. It is a really beautiful looking copy. I mean, looks very square and everything. It's not white pages, off-white to white. But yeah, 38,400. That was a monster sale and a record. Not something that you generally see very often in the with the silver, modern, bronze type books. Like when I'm scrolling through my listings, I mark which ones were records, and there are not many of them in this, in this time period. Now, one thing I can definitely say about the books that are in the silver and bronze and modern is that a lot more of the books are right around what I think they'll go for. They sell more often. They're a little easier to get tighter on your pricing with. And so there aren't nearly as many, to me, like really interesting sales in terms of price. Like we had an Amazing Spider-Man 15, a 9.2. I had that one going for 8,400, went for 8,100. I mean, almost right around what I thought it would. Then we had a 16 and a 9.4. I had this one going for 7,000. It went for 7,800. I mean, within around 10%. So like a lot more of the silver, bronze, modern books tend to be a little bit tighter on the price, but there were still some surprises out there. One of them, we saw this one sell during the live stream. Batman 251, 9.8, white pages, $39,600. I had this book going for 27,500. It had a sale just recently for like 28.5 for 28.8. Record was 33,000. That $28,000 sale was a pedigree. And so this one crushed that pedigree sale. 39,600, beat my estimate by 44% and beat the record by like 20%. This was a really strong sale for this book. And I think there's another one in a 9.8 coming up in the next Comic Link auction. So, I mean, there are 29 9.8s. It's not like an extremely rare 9.8. This was a big number for that book. Then right after that, a pretty big disappointing sale, in my opinion. We had Brave and the Bold #54 from the Don and Maggie Thompson collection pedigree. 9.6, $18,000. Prior record, 36,000. I had it going for 30. This is an extremely tough book in grade. This 40% below my estimate. So really an underperformer in this first Teen Titans. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we'll get some resurgence in this. Maybe it was a really good pickup. Maybe James Gunn will help, bring back Teen Titans a little bit again, or I don't know. But yeah, definitely an underperformer with respect to this book. Then we had some other pretty big Silver Age keys. We had a Fantastic Four #1, 7.5, went for $78,000. I had it going for $85,000. 8% below my estimate. Again, not like a huge disappointment or anything. Prior record, 168,000. So it's definitely come down from those, the comic boom periods. We had a really nice copy of issue number 12, that first Hulk versus the Thing battle, a 9.2. I'd gone for 12,000, went for 12,000 exactly. So right on the mark with that one. Then we had another Fantastic Four #12, an 8.5. I had this one going for 5,000, went for 4,800, so within 4%, pretty much right on the mark. Now there were some interesting books that came up right after this as part of Fantastic Four. So there were some bound volumes. So the first one was this bound volume of issues 1 through 20. They're trimmed and everything. I had this one going for 16,837. Went for 100% over my estimate, 33,600. And the way I priced this one out is I priced out all the books individually in here like they were approximately 2.5 trimmed. So if somebody had decided they wanted to take this apart and get them all graded individually and sold, I priced them all out like that. And then I gave it a 1.5 multiple. So I added all that together, multiplied by 1.5, because you do often get a premium for these bound volumes. And that's how I got 16,837. And this one it crushed it. And the interesting thing was that there was another set of bound volumes right after that. And this one, to me, did very poorly. I did almost the same rule. I priced everything out, and I did a different multiple though. I did 1.4 because these ones weren't quite as nice. There were a couple things that were a little different with this, but these ones weren't quite as nice. But the first one was also signed by Stan Lee. And so I gave it a little bit lower multiple, like I said, at 1.4. So I had it going for 20,419 because this was a much larger set of bound volumes. This was almost complete from issues 1 through 75. It was missing issue 25, also missing, I think, annual number 1. But had just about everything else. And so this one was a much more complete set and really didn't do well, in my opinion. This is the type of book that may, like, you could probably piece this one out and actually do pretty well with it. Whereas that first one, a big premium was paid for the fact that it was a little nicer presenting bound volume. And so someone's definitely going to be like, I feel like you're keeping this one together, and you're more likely that someone's going to split this set of bound volumes apart, and they're going to sell them all individually. But that's just my guess on how that's going to all work out. Now we had a big Bronze Age key. We had Giant Size X-Men #1, 9.8. I had it going for 34,000, went for 33,600. Like I said, like there's not nearly as many surprises when you get into these books because they sell so much more often that you can get much closer on a much tighter range on what the books are going to go for. And so there are some that are interesting, like those bound volumes. Bound volumes are tough. I mean, those are definitely tough. But books like this, then we had, a Green Lantern 76, a 9.6. I had this one going for 13,000, went for 13,200. We had a Hulk 180, 9.8. I had this one going for 15,000, went for 15,600. We had a 9.6, 181. I had it going for 19,000, went for 19,200. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like the books that sell much more often, they're easier to get a tight pricing on. Even though I have people in the comments who are like, oh, you can't predict prices. It's like, you can do it. You can predict prices pretty well. It's just, there are certain ones that definitely get a little harder than others. And it's just the more unique the book is, it gets a little, you get a little wider range around what that price is going to be. An example of that is this one right here. This was the 9.9 that was in this opening set. So this was our opening session. New Mutants 87, signed by Todd McFarlane, 9.9, sold for $9,000. This was a strong sale. Prior record, 2,250. I had it going for 6,000, for 9,000, 50% over my estimate. So 9.9s. I mean, there's still some interest. There's still definitely some interest in the 9.9s. And this proves it. It's a pretty unique book. It has sold a few times. I don't know if it's the only one. I think there might be a couple of them. But yeah, $9,000. So pretty solid sale. Then we had another Showcase 4. I had this one going for 27,000, went for 27,600. We had a Showcase 22. I had it going for 13,500, went for 13,200. So you got to, like, again, you kind of get what I'm getting at here. Now, one that definitely corrected, that went below what I thought it would, was this Star Wars #1 35-cent price variant. This book, back maybe 2 years ago or so, sold for 56,400 and a 9.4. I had it going for 41,000. It seemed like it was coming back down some, but went down even more. 28,800. Definitely, to me, a disappointment for this sale. It is a unique item. It is a niche item, but still, to me, this was a disappointing sale for Star Wars #1. Now, another area where you can get some surprisingly strong sales are top of census. And here we had Superman 147. I mean, it's a minor key. Like, it's the first appearance of the League of Supervillains. And it's a 9.8. I think it's, 1 in 9.8, none higher. I think it was just recently graded too. Yep. Yeah, so 446. So very recently graded. I mean, we'll take a close look at this one. I haven't really looked at it. See how nice this 9, and there's a spine tick right there, looks like. A little like soft corner or whatever. It's a nice looking book. Nothing really jumps out to me. Maybe a little rounded there. I mean, yeah. I guess it's 9.8. I'm not going to argue the 9.8 on that one. I had this book going for 10,000. $50,400. Like, I mean, just, this was, this was probably the biggest surprise for me. I got to think about it. Like, I mean, just 50 grand. I mean, like that is a huge number for this book. I mean, look at what, like an 8.5, $336. Like, that's what's so shocking about it. I mean, a 9.4, $39.60 during the comic boom, a 9.6, 11,000 during the comic boom. I mean, 6,000 pre-comic boom. So, like, this is the type of book that really, really surprises me, because I'm not going to say it's worthless in lower grades. Like, it has value. It's like a few $100s. But then you get to the 9.8 and it's 50 grand. Like, that's wild. I mean, wild. Now, it has to be like somebody putting together like wanting to put together a top set of CGC graded books or something, and they need this one, and it's the only one, so that, but like, when you just look at that multiple, like even an 8.5 from 1960 for $336, like, this sold for more than that 9.8 Amazing Spider-Man #8. A lot more than it. And that's a much more significant in-demand book than Superman 147. So, I mean, yeah, like, just wild. That's all I can say about it. I mean, I did not see that sale coming. Like, if it had been like 15,000 or something, like, based on these types of numbers, I could see that. But 50,000, huge sale for that book. Now, there was one other bound volume that did pretty well. It was actually right after this. It was the Tales of Suspense 39 through 50. And so, again, trimmed. They didn't specifically say, oh yeah, they did say it here. So trimmed in this one. Sometimes it says it, sometimes it doesn't. So trimmed. So again, I did it very similarly. I priced them out based on a 2.5 trimmed, restored grade. And then I gave it a multiple. And so for this one, I gave it a multiple of 1.5. Like these books outside of issue 39, especially when they're restored, don't have a lot of value. And so I had this as 6,277 and went for 10,200. So I imagine, I mean, it's a nice looking bound volume. I imagine the goal here is just to keep it as the bound volume, which is what I would do if someone picked up this one. I would not try to break this one up. They're nice looking copies. But to me, this was a pretty big number paid for this book. But yeah, I mean, the bound volumes are cool. I've picked up a couple bound volumes recently. I do like them. They are difficult to price. It's definitely, again, it's a niche market. But yeah, so big number for that. We're going to talk about a few more books. Then we'll, because I know you've been sticking with me for a long time. This is a long video. You probably maybe came back a couple times to finish this one. First, we've got Tomb of Dracula number 10, a 9.8. Surprisingly, pretty strong sale. I had it going for 17,000, went for 20,400. I mean, record was 48,000. So it's definitely come down from the record. But I thought that the recent news was going to hurt it even more, that it's kind of like maybe not even doing this Blade stuff. But yeah, 20 grand for a 9.8. So solid sale for that one. Right afterwards, Ultimate Fallout 4. 10,200, got into the 5 figures. I had it going for 8,000. We just had a sale at like 7,700 like a week or two ago. So this, I said in my prior video that I thought it would get more bids than that other sale, because that other one was probably an eBay sale. And so, being on Heritage is going to get a little more attention than an eBay sale. But still, I wouldn't be paying this. I think there's another one in this auction, like in the session 2 on Saturday. And there's another one coming up in the Comic Link auction. Like, they're going to keep coming out. And so just, I've said it before, I'll say it again, be careful buying this book. I don't care if they said that there's going to be a live action Miles Morales. Like, there's too many and they're coming up for sale, and you're taking a lot of risk, in my opinion. Then we had another big Silver Age key, X-Men 1, 7.5, 31,200. I had gone for 29,000, so pretty much right in line. Then this one was a big sale. X-Men 94, 9.8. A few of these have been coming up, and the prices have just been trending down. I had this going for 32,000. This went for 55,200. I mean, I'll show you what I'm talking about. I think we've had 2 or 3 this year that have come up for sale. And so we had the 9.8. Yeah, 3. So we had, 6 this year. I mean, look at these numbers. And a few of these are on Heritage. Like, this is definitely a Heritage sale. This is definitely a Heritage sale. So is this one. I bet 3 of these were Heritage. They might not have all been white pages. I don't know. We'd have to go look. But 32, 37, 27, 31, 34. So I feel like my 32,000 estimate was very reasonable. 55,200. I mean, let's check if any others were white pages. I mean, maybe they weren't. This one's off-white to white. This one is off-white to white. This one, off-white to white. And this one, off-white to white. Let's see about this one right here. I have to go to CGC's site to see what that one is. This one was white. So the 34,000 in September was a white page copy. And then this one, $21,000 more. I mean, yeah. Some like those are ones where I'm just like, I don't really get it, because it's not like it's not coming up for sale. 6 sales this year alone. Like, why are you paying 60% more? I don't know. I mean, if you got enough money, it doesn't matter. But it just, like, if I get it with like a rare book, but like an X-Men 94 it's not a rare book. It's a Bronze Age book. Even in a 9.8, there's 48 of them. 131 9.6s. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not ever trying to make someone feel bad about a purchase, but like sometimes I don't get it when it's like a relatively common book. And yeah, but big number. Yeah, big sale for that one. We got a Foom number 10, 9.8. This book has definitely corrected quite a bit. I had this one going for, I mean, it had a prior record of 33,600. I slashed that down to 19,500 and it went well below that, 12,600. So, and I think this is, yeah, it's a white pages too. The interesting thing with this one is this actually has the delivery like sticker on the back, and they notate that on the label. I didn't think you could get the 9.8 with that, but apparently you can. So, and this wasn't graded recently. This one I think has a pretty old number. Not old. Okay, so 3.8. So it's probably graded like 4 years ago. You can check. 3 years ago. So yeah, it's not like this was graded this month or last month or anything like that. But yeah, I guess you can get a 9.8 with those little sticker labels on them. But yeah, definitely. Maybe that's why it went lower. I don't know. Oh, that's right. Okay, that's why my numbers were off by about 8,000 from Heritage numbers. I did not include this in my numbers. It was this War of the Worlds complete first publishing. It's just, this felt a little too out of line for comics, and so I did not include this in my numbers. That's why. All right, that makes sense. Then we had a couple pulps closing things out at the end. We had this Weird Tales 108. 50 went for 8,100. I did going for 8,500, so pretty much right in line. Then this is a big sale. This book, it keeps doing well. I mean, I can give warnings about it all day, that there's a bunch of them out there, that you should be cautious with it because they could keep coming out, especially with big sales. It's a cool cover. I mean, part of it is selfishness on my part because I kind of want the book, and but it doesn't seem like the price is going down at all. I had it going for 21,000, went for 31,200. Prior record was 30,000, so it set a new record. And there was somebody that asked in Mickey's video about pricing for pulps. And so I'll show you. I said it in that video, but maybe if you don't know, you can actually look up pulps on GPA now. So you can see 1933 Weird Tales number 118, which is how it is designated here. And there's that sale, 31,200. Actually beat the June sale for a 7.5. Now, part of the other reason I thought this one might go down was that when I compared these two copies, like that $30,000 one, to me, is like far superior. Like, one, it was white pages. I mean, page quality, not a big deal to me, but like the colors on this one, the one that sold for 30, so not like the deep greens, like the red's nice and everything. Like this one feels either, I don't know if it's a color strike or it's a little faded or what. But yeah, the $30,000 one to me is far superior copy, even though it's the same grade. So remember, it's not always just the grade. To me, like visual appeal is a big part of that. And there was one other pulp that was in this auction. It was early on. I was really tempted to bid on this one. It's pretty cool. This was Shadow number 1. And so what this is the first appearance of the Shadow. And if you're not familiar with the Shadow is a character who Batman is based on. And so it's from 1931, obviously well before Detective Comics 27. 1.0 went for 26,400. I had it going for 25,000, so pretty much right in line with where I thought it would go. I basically, the way I priced this one was off of raw copies, because it's not like this book comes up for sale very often. Back cover's pretty cool too. You know, who's the Shadow? It was sitting really low before the live bidding started. It was at 15,600. And so like, I absolutely would have bought this book, you know, at like 20 or 22. Once it starts getting up to like these types of numbers, like it's a lot. And so for me, it's just like, I don't know. I just didn't know if I wanted to put that type of money into it, but there's certain things where it's just like, they're so rare, and it's tied to Batman. It's such a big deal that, yeah, is a cool pulp. Like there aren't many pulps that I care all that much about, but I thought this was a pretty cool one that you don't see all that often. And still, you know, universal grade 1.0. So it's complete, off-white pages, not bad page quality. It doesn't look, I mean, it looks dirty and everything. It doesn't look that bad. So this one was pretty cool. But that's the last book. If you have stuck with me, we have been going for, I don't know, an hour, more than an hour, something like that. It's been a while, but I appreciate it. Hopefully you enjoyed this, got something out of it. Like I said at the beginning, you know, it wasn't a weak auction, but it was on the weaker side. It was not as strong as I've seen in prior auctions, prior big signature auctions across Heritage, Comic Link, Comic Connect, all that kind of stuff. At least for session 1. I did not price out everything for session 2. Session 2 has like, or the session 2 of comics, there's like 480 comics in there or something. I don't have the time, but I made the effort for this one, and yeah, just felt a little bit on the weak side. But let me know what you think in the comments. Hopefully you enjoyed this, and I will see you on the next one.